I'm here today with David, Jason, and Andrew. It should be a fun stream. There are a lot of things we want to talk about today, and Jason's got some ridiculous number of good tips that I'm sure will be fun. I want to talk about NASA's in just a second, but before we get started, I had a quick little promo video to play, so I'm just going to hit the button and share something with everybody real quick while I catch my old man breath. Content where Thomas and I have bundled our courses. Maybe not. Maybe I don't know how to do this. Let me try that again. So we're going to play. Okay, I'm just going to hit it together at a crazy low price. The course includes all of my courses that'll take you all the way from having never looked at code before to using Unity on a professional level. And Thomas's course, you'll learn all of his secrets on how to secure six-figure funding from publishers, crowdfunding, how to get your game onto the Steam front page, and hopefully how to go full-time and make a living solely creating games. With my courses, I'll teach you everything about C# coding in Unity, good workflows, tips and tricks on how to get your games done faster, and ultimately how to successfully scale your games. You'll learn topics such as multiplayer, AI, animation, quest systems, and a ton more, all while building a variety of game types like 2D platformers, RPGs, top-down hack and slashes, first and third-person shooters. Once you've mastered all the skills to create your own games, you can polish them up with the amazing art skills you've learned from Thomas's course. The Ultimate Game Dev course will only be available from July 1st to August 1st, and to ensure everyone gets the best experience, we've had to limit this offer to only 300 students. And as a special early bird offer, everybody that signs up within the first 24 hours of launch will receive a free and unique Ultimate Game Dev hoodie. So definitely go check it out by clicking the link in the description to get more information. And sign up for the email list to get notified when it goes live so you can get your Ultimate Game Dev hoodie included free and ensure you get a spot before they run out.
No, you're muted.
And I'm muted too. Yeah, I'm terrible at this. Anyway, I was trying to play that video. I obviously need to go through and do some editing and stuff on it. But it's a little promo. Anybody that's interested, I'll have the link down in the description shortly after this. Anyway, let's get started, guys. Welcome, everybody. And thanks, everybody, for coming out here. Before we dive into things, I just wanted to really quickly jump back into our NAS discussion, if you guys don't mind. So we were talking really briefly about network attached storage, and I think this is an important thing just because I got it not just for like personal stuff, but also for game development stuff. So anybody who doesn't know what network attached storage is or NASs are, they're essentially just a remote, or I guess a local hard drive array that's separate from your computer, where you can store all of your files or certain subsets of your files and have them backed up, kind of like when you have stuff in source control, but you have them locally as well. It's just another way to store off and save a bunch of data. And I was just telling everybody that I just recently grabbed a Synology one to do exactly that, to save off things like my course videos and my projects in a local setting too. So I've got them remotely backed up and then locally as well. Do you guys use your NAS systems for game development stuff as well, or do you only use them for like personal things? This I was kind of curious about and wanted to know.
So for myself, it's mainly for the channel stuff. So the big videos, stuff I've had to capture and all the rest. And I just, when I put that on my local drive, I have some command scripts that basically pump that stuff over to the NAS drive on a regular basis and keep that thing hooked up. For all my game dev stuff, mostly I'm still using GitHub and just pumping the stuff up on the server.
Yeah, I have about 4 terabyte scratch drive in my computer, 2 terabyte just OS drive. That's a Evo 280 or whatever it is. So that's solid state, so it's fine. Like I find all of my game devy stuff tends to live on the computer, except for whatever gets pushed for commits. I just use mine almost exclusively for video. Both actual media drive, because it's really good having media across all of your platforms. And secondly, I use it for the large video files, like recording 4K footage, which takes up a lot of space. Mm. So yeah, mostly it's video stuff. I find that's where the most value is.
Interesting. Yeah. So the reason I had me thinking about this was, one, like I do like to save a lot of my stuff like that, just pop it over to a NAS. But the NAS that I set up is actually replacing what was just like an old Windows server that had a bunch of hard drives with drive bender and pools that were shared where I would save stuff. And like you guys, I had a lot of stuff that was like videos and pictures and personal stuff. But the things that I found while I was converting stuff over to the NAS was the old projects. I found tons and tons of old source control and old code projects because I'd always like whenever I'd take them, I'd just drag them over there and back them up onto there, or I would map my project folders directly to that server before it died. So I found lots and lots of interesting, fun stuff to dig through. I don't know if there's any real value in any of it at all, but it was just a lot of fun for me to find those projects and start looking through them again. So.
But see, I did the same thing, right? I remember finding a drive and I found like 5 terabytes of stuff that I'd done, like ActionScript 2 tower defense games and, random nonsense. And it was really cool, as you said. But when I started going through it, it just felt exhausting. It was like, this is just a graveyard of old ideas and projects. And I honestly spent probably a month trying to sort of wrangle it into something that I could keep and parse out the good stuff. And in the end, I just bulk deleted the whole folder, and it's such a sense of relief to just wipe that and go, you know what, fresh slate. And then I started keeping track of it. So since then, I took it as a personal lesson. Now I take GIFs of all of the projects I work on, and I use that as my history backlog. So it's like a visual library of old projects. I don't need the old code anymore. I just need the lessons of what I made and how I did it. So yeah, I don't know about you, but I found the whole thing, looking back at all of that, was just, I needed to clean that mental space and just wipe the lot at some stage.
Anyone who's had to go through a parent's garage knows the feeling.
Yeah, I didn't get too inspired to dig too deep into any of my projects. I just started opening them all up, seeing which ones would compile, and then hitting play. And that was pretty much the extent of it, because I know there's really not a lot I can learn or gain from them other than just memories and inspiration. So I just kind of wanted to keep them around. So like in another 20 years, when there's no way I'll remember that I even made those games, I'll be able to look back at them again and just check them out. As I found a bunch of old design docs, which was fun, finding just all kinds of crazy ideas that I've had throughout the years, or that other people that I've worked with and friends had that they submitted on projects that we were working on together.
I think the most ridiculous one I found was a college project where I edited a video for the Gaming Society, and it was just me putting ridiculous dramatic music to a bunch of shots of video games and stuff, and it's like, yep, that's classic college Gaming Society right there.
That reminds me, I was digging through some stuff the other day, and I found my dissertation from the 90s. And it's just like a big, and of course it's all paper, so there's a big paper dissertation from computer science in the 90s, and it's like, what would I do with this ever?
You gotta read it out loud for everyone.
Well, I called it Dave because, why not? And it was document analysis visualization editor. It was my attempt to do a visual representation of an internet search. So whenever you would actually search on the internet, instead of giving you the little description and the title, it would basically give you a picture, and that picture would be displayed based on nouns and all sorts of stuff throughout the actual text and the visuals and all the rest that were in there, and it would create this crazy image. And it was absolutely useless, but yeah.
Hey, well, mine was equally as useless. My final year project was behavior analysis in video games, and I wanted to see if you could track analytics about someone playing a game and compare it to the Ocean Big Five test and see if there was any correlation between it. When you've got a sample size of 20 people, it's useless information, but it was like, hey, I tried at least. I pretended that it was valuable.
But yeah, I'd recommend getting a NAS for people and getting that sorted. I actually use a solid state NAS now, solid state drives all the way through my NAS rather than the big drives. Because I used to have a giant freaking old NAS box, and this thing was so loud. Like every time it would whir up the drives and the fans would go on it and all the rest, and it was just super loud. So I found a really small one by Synology, a really titchy one that just takes 4 SSDs. And the other tip is to buy drives that are associated with NAS storage, not just your standard drives. So that's something that a lot of people miss out on. They buy just your standard computer drives and stick them up into the NAS.
Yeah, they'll wear out much faster, and they're slower as well.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure to go and get network attached storage drives, and they're very specific. And Western Digital, and all the big companies do, but they're just not something that pops up in your standard search because.
What is it? Is it the caviar greens again? I can't remember. What's the standard Western Digital NAS drive?
Is
it the red
red
one? Yeah, I know they're all. I always forget the color. Yeah, it's one of the. Yeah, it's red. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually just got it yesterday. They're on
sale.
There
you go. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so they were on sale at Best Buy. I was like, I'll grab 2 and pop them in there and started transferring stuff over. That's when I found all the things. That's why it's so fresh on my mind. So.
Yeah, I haven't bought NAS drives since I got my NAS like a couple of years ago. So as far as I'm concerned, I did all the research back then. Then I just put it in a box in the corner and it works. I have all of the events and the notification alert. So if something goes wrong, it'll let me know. But so far, it's been fine.
Yeah, this thing's got an awful beep. If something goes wrong, suddenly it just starts making this audible beep throughout the room. Yeah.
I will say though, given the current climate, the way things go, like I also have 2 terabytes on Google Drive, and I have my backups go from my NAS to Google Drive automatically. So that's something else I recommend. Is depending on which service you're using, Western Digital and Synology both have services built into a lot of their NAS, which allow you to automate the process of saying back up content to Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever. So there's the usual rule of you kind of want 3 different locations for your data, right? And so having one of them be not on your location is probably a good idea.
Yeah, I saw that the Synology setup also did like syncing across systems, so you could set up multiple and have them logged into the same account and just have them auto synchronize. Seemed kind of interesting too. I don't know that it would be first I was like, oh, it could be useful for game dev stuff and maybe for like build deployments or something, just pushing out builds. But I don't think that it's really any easier than just using source control or something else. So it's kind of neat, but not the most useful thing. Maybe for sharing videos or something. Anyway, somebody said that Infinity PBR's assets are beautiful, and I just wanted to agree with them. So.
Thanks. I agree with them as well.
Yes.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Didn't you have a sale very recently too, Andrew?
There was a one thing well, I think right now there's the last day of the first smash hit summer sales is there's one thing, and then there were a couple things on the new asset sale that was a few weeks ago. And I think, if my memory serves, I've got a couple more things coming up in the summer sales later in the summer.
Oh, nice. Are the dates for that announced yet?
Well, it's all summer, so it's started already, and then every week there's a different theme. I don't know if every week's theme has been announced, but I think there's like a 3D theme, a 2D theme, sci-fi, fantasy,
cool,
low poly. So you can imagine where some of mine might fit in there.
Oh, okay, awesome. I didn't realize there were a whole bunch of sales going. So these are live now?
Yeah, the first one ends today, and that's the low poly one. And my Dragons low poly pack is in there. And then I think 2D is next. Yeah, actually the on the asset store they list which weeks is week. So it's low poly, 2D, 3D, fantasy, sci-fi.
Oh, sweet. I'm gonna screen share that real quick. Just pull that thing up. I did not know that was going on like that. All right, so 50% off. Wow, 50% off. Nice.
See, I'm unfortunately one of those many people who, when I went to that page, most of it was grayed out on account of owning most of those assets already. So,
already got them all, huh? All low. Wow. Yeah, I got to try not to get distracted.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that also is just good for everything. Like a lot of the particle packs and stuff are like don't have to be low poly. Wow.
So UModeler, have you guys played with that recently? I remember we talked about this a while ago, and I know we mentioned it a bit, but have you got anybody who used it recently?
I finally went back, and I will say it is 1,000,000 times better than it was when I first used it. It's still very complicated, and it's got a lot of tools that I haven't taken the time to look into. And honestly, they have one thing which drives me insane. 90% of their example videos are just somebody making something in it with music playing. And that's fine, but like it's not a tutorial. Like you may think it is, but you can put out thousands of videos of you doing work in a tool. But if you're not going to explain and describe what you're doing, it is not a tutorial. And so a lot of the content is really good examples of the power of the tool. But again, it just doesn't explain the shortcuts and how to get it. Now, again, you can look them up, but like if you're trying to get people to use the tool, you need to lean into the workflow. So I used it for a while and then just went back to what I'm familiar with because I was much faster with ProBuilder. I do think it would be a better tool if I got used to it, but it's now a polished tool, but they're still lacking like the bridge to get me to move over to it. So
that makes sense. It seems, it looks really powerful, but I'm looking through these videos. They're just examples of what they've done or what people can do to find the actual.
They do have this really nice like BSP brush style subtraction. That alone is probably worth the price of admission, where you can have one shape cut out of another shape. It lets you do a lot of really complicated stuff that is considerably harder with ProBuilder. There is a beta subtraction or binary Boolean operator tool in ProBuilder, but it's just not worth messing with. It causes issues and it messes up the geometry. It looks like UModeler will allow you to work on finer detail when you get used to it. But like I said, so far it's Polybrush and ProBuilder for me for now.
Is that subtract tool even in ProBuilder still?
It is, but you have to like actively go into the settings and enable the experimentals.
Oh, okay. They've hidden it now. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember using that thing a bit, and just like you said, it tends to randomly break sometimes.
It breaks things, yeah.
Like, oh, what happened? Yeah, this looks nice. Are there any other really cool things that we should look at on this sale, by the way, Andrew, that you can think of? I mean, other than the dragon?
Probably, of course. The dragon's cool. It's not the most popular pack, but for my low poly stuff, it's all about the bundle, which is not on sale. But if you did get the dragon, you could upgrade to the bundle, and you'd still get the same $10 discount. So that's cool. But let me see. Let's see. All deals.
So now I'm just curious if there's anything I'm missing out on before the day ends. Although I guess things will still be available. They'll go on sale again. But
I'm a big fan of all the particle effects. So like mesh effects, the RPG VFX bundle, spell packs. All those are those are the type of things for me when I'm thinking about developing a quick game or a quick prototype. Those are the ones that are like you just throw that in and it looks better.
Yeah, anything from Arcanor I tend to buy if it's on sale.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say this Voxel Arsenal I actually have. This one's really nice.
Yeah, those ones are always a favor of mine just because they're so easy to throw in there and just get something out of them. I always also really like the UI stuff. I'm looking at GUI Kit, the Stone. These are things like I want to use them all because I want to make cool games that look like this aesthetic, but of course you can't make that many games perhaps. Maybe you can. I can't. Not so fast. But the UI stuff always attracts me just because it looks so pretty, and a lot of the publishers who make these do a really good job with their marketing, graphics, and stuff. So Layer Lab does a good job of that for sure.
And to be honest, and even as somebody who I literally open up Photoshop and do it myself, even I sometimes look at these packs and go, they're just such a good starting point. Like it's so much it's not like it's difficult to open up Photoshop and draw some rectangles, but to then do the drop shadows and layer stuff together, it's like for $10 or something, just to start you off with like 80% of the stuff there, you can then go in and modify them yourself later. It's a really good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm getting that kit. That one's cool. All right, let me stop sharing. So anyways, what else you guys want to talk about? Anything else new going on with you guys, just development-wise or interesting things?
One thing just to tie up that last conversation about hard drives too, just to be particularly careful. Here's something that I learned that surprised me until I kind of got into them. The one major downside with SSDs to keep in mind is SSDs are obviously faster, like by large margins faster than your standard hard drives, because it doesn't have the spinning platter. But what a lot of people don't realize is the way a lot of solid state drives work, especially the hybrid ones, but I think all of them pretty much, is using NAND flash. And so something that happens is it's effectively got like an internal buffer where a portion of the accessed memory is stored in faster memory than the rest of the drive. And so that works really well if half your drive is full, because it'll basically shuffle the stuff that's used regularly into the faster memory. But long story short, if you've got a solid state drive that's nearly full, it will tank performance. It'll suddenly be like a fraction of the speed it used to be. So it's one of those things to be aware of that, funnily enough, you kind of want like 30% or 40% headroom on any solid state drive you buy that you actively don't fill up, just so it maintains that sort of scratch pad speed.
For mine, go ahead. I was just dropping SSD in the NAS and use that for the cache stuff. Apparently, the Synology will just auto cache frequently used stuff onto there. Because of the same issue. They're worried about the cost and the write issues. And I've had a lot of SSDs fail in the past. I don't know about you guys. Yeah, no. I've had many SSD failures to where like I've stopped buying anything other than like Samsung ones.
Well, maybe that's the difference. I always get the Samsung Evos, and I've never had an issue with them. Crystals are good too.
I use Samsung Pros. Samsung Pros on the machine, and then it's Western Digitals for the long terms.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are other good ones out there, and it's probably gotten a lot more secure. But when SSDs first came out, I went through a lot. I mean, I had SSDs that lasted me a month, and then they died. And then the replacement came, and they lasted me 3 months, and then it died.
What are you doing to those drives?
Absolutely nothing. I guess just being cheap and trying to get ones that were a better deal. They were fast and a good deal. So yeah, switching to the Samsung ones.
I pretty much exclusively, it's Samsung, it's probably Evo, and it's probably M2. That's basically the default that I'll go with wherever possible.
Yeah. All right, so hard drives. Somebody was asking about boxing games in Unity just a minute ago. I saw that pop up in chat, and I just wanted to bring it up because it was something that we actually worked on at one point. I can't remember if I talked to you about that, Dave, when we were talking about doing a VR boxing game.
So many people have talked about VR boxing. I mean, there's free out or something at the moment.
There are a bunch out there. Before any had come out, one of the things we had talked about and started working on was a boxing game, and then Michael was actually working on it. Wolf, yeah, he was doing some of the work on it. Yeah, he was building it out with Salim. It was interesting. The project got scrapped eventually, but you definitely can build a boxing game in Unity. There's apps. I mean, you could build pretty much any kind of game in Unity. I can't think of a kind of game that you couldn't build in Unity. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there something that you couldn't build in Unity that you could build in some other game engine, I guess? I can't think of anything.
Can't think of anything.
Well, I'm still dubious about the Unity network stack. I'll be completely honest. There's probably some limitations there, but other than that,
there's you can build any game in Unity. I've seen open world games in Unity, loads of streaming games, racers, boxing, all across the board.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any limit. And a boxing game is relatively easy to make in Unity, depending on what kind of boxing you want to have. But I mean, making a boxing game in general wasn't a very difficult proposition. There's not a whole lot to the game. I'm sure like the new AAA boxing games probably make me a liar there, and they do all kinds of crazy shit. But most boxing games, at least, are pretty simple.
Yeah.
Let's see. Unity deprecated Enlighten. I didn't even know about that. You guys know about this? That it says, "Hey, Jasons and Dave and Andrews, did you see that Unity deprecated Enlighten? Is it safe to use again? Do you have any opinion on this lighting solution?" News to me.
I did not know they'd done that. Oh, there you go.
News to me
I
as
still
well.
use Bakery whenever I have a chance. So to be honest, that's what I use for most of my stuff. If you haven't tried Bakery, just give it a try. It's very hard not to be an instant convert. It's so fast. It's so much easier to work with, and it never stops your workflow, unlike every other lighting system. Even the good ones, even the ones in GPU, you're still waiting for builds. But if you're doing Bakery, you can just have a second window open and effectively move around your scene, and it just lights stuff while you work. It's amazing.
Now, let me pull that up here and just screen share it for everybody, unless you want to.
No, go ahead.
All right, let's hit the button. Let's see. Pull that up and show everyone what you're talking about. All right, can we see it? So this is the one that you're using?
Yeah, it's two parts. You get this, and then you get the previewer. There's like a second asset from them, and if you combine the two together, it just makes it so easy to work with.
So I think we've talked about this in a previous stream too. So anybody interested, go back through the past ones and dive into the solution. We gotta wait for this thing to go on sale again. I don't think I grabbed it last time, and I wanted to. Totally forgot. Maybe I should just add it to cart now and go try it out later. Seems like a good idea. Let's see. So I know I only got you guys for like an hour. So are there any specific things that Andrew or Jason wanted to dive into today? Just talk about or get off your chest or share? Or, I don't know.
Not specifically for me. I'm just skipping an hour of work, so I'm happy to do that.
Ditto. It's a nice break middle of the day from the usual stuff. So I'm happy to talk about anything.
All right, cool. So then in that case, I'm going to just take a couple questions real quick and then dive into some tips, I think. So there was one question about switching to Godot. What are your thoughts on Godot versus Unity? I think I've answered this a bunch of times.
We covered this last time.
Yeah.
What's that?
We covered this last time.
Yeah, I would say unless you have a very specific reason, don't switch. Like just use. I prefer Unity. Yeah,
they're both solid engines. They both do really good stuff. There's great games coming out on both of them. I mean, I'm a fan of Unity because I've been using Unity since 2010. It's so are you, Jason. But
yeah, and the ecosystem
of
Unity is just super strong. It's big, it's growing, and you can do just about everything with it. I can't find a reason to switch. Nothing has convinced me yet that there's a reason to switch to any of the other game engines. Even
I still just get so frustrated that's even a conversation people still have. It's like, but Unreal looks nicer. It says, okay, Unreal is used by big companies who have lots of people and lots of money. So what you're actually saying is lots of people and lots of money make things look better. Surprise. You caught me off guard. You're right. That's true. If I had millions and a big studio of 200 people, maybe you could make something better. But like, most projects aren't that. Most projects are under 50 grand or 1,000 grand. Like, it's not that much money, and they can be done in any engine with the people you have and the tools that are at your disposal.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Adam demo that Unity did. It's a fantastic looking piece of art, and that can run in engine, and I've seen it running on a laptop, and it's really good. So you can create anything you want. I mean, Unreal has some really tidy new tool sets that they're showing off in these recent videos.
Yeah, I really like the world streaming stuff. It looks freaking awesome.
It looks really tidy.
Yeah, that's the one thing that like makes me really intrigued and interested, but I don't have a game that fits into that specific problem and right now that I want to build, so it's less exciting. Plus, I always wonder, like when I see those videos, every time I see a demo of like some awesome, cool system, I always wonder like, what is it actually like when you implement it? Like, how well does this work when it's actually a game and not a demo, right? Because I've seen, mostly just because I've been fooled so many times before by these awesome demos that look great, and then you go to try to implement it as a game and like, oh yeah, you can't actually use this for games. It doesn't work like that. It'll only render the thing and you can't put any objects or whatever. Not that I expect that to be the case, but I just wonder like what kinds of issues are gonna.
And I've watched like 15 GDC talks across the board in multiple game engines where they're all like, oh, and here's this amazing graphical fidelity that outpaces everything you've ever seen in the engine. Oh, but of course we had the source code to the engine and 8 team members of the studio working with us. And it's like, okay, so like maybe we can't just replicate that ourselves. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. We got a super chat question that came in. It's a good one. How do you handle reliable hit detection? I've used rigid bodies for this, but they work poorly at high speeds. Are there any good assets for this?
Yeah, the rigid body. You just have to set it correctly. I'd say in most cases, people are using the rigid body with discrete collision detection. Just look at the modes. There's continuous collision detection. You can change your sample rates. Like, it'll work. You just have to mess with the settings to kind of know what you're looking for.
And there's other things. Like a lot of people talk about this when they're talking about bullet games and stuff like that. And I always ask them, well, are you using a rigid body in every single bullet? Can you just swap that out for raycasting? Can you do raycast past from the bullet so the bullet goes past and it does a raycast in the frame? There's lots of ways of getting around this. And nearly every time I see this, it's about bullets. And it's like,
something
can you just do it with
like
raycast?
That, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
half the time they just swap out to a raycast system that uses nearly every FPS, and job done.
Yeah, and just to explain that point you're saying, so depending what you're doing, there is either hit scan weapons, instant point of damage on click button to other person. Then there's projectile based, which fires an object and moves it. And then you can use rigid bodies to do that. You add forces and forces move. But the problem that's happening is the force is moving the object at stepped rates. And if you've got an object here and the stepped rate steps over your object, it won't collide because it moved farther in one frame than it would have hit the object. So a solution that you can use, especially for networked games where you're waiting for latency issues, is when an object moves, you fire a raycast from the 2 frames it was at and see if something is in the middle that it missed. So your bullet's doing this moving, and then in between that, there's raycasts lining up the differences. And if something was hit in a previous frame, it'll kind of like bounce back and resolve the collision. So there is lots of ways to solve this. You don't actually need to just not use rigid bodies. You just need to be careful when you do and where you use it. So most cases, ballistic stuff, rigid bodies are fine. They don't need to be that fast. But in normal bullets, don't use bullets. Use hit scan, because in most cases, like if you're dealing with a minigun, you don't need to see bullets. What you need to see is particles. Fire particles out of the gun and then register the hits instantly, because conceptually, from the speed of a player, that's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And the raycast option is great for those other ones too, or when you really want to shoot something out like that, and have it actually fire off and have like drops and shit, which can get really interesting and complicated.
And if you want a perfect example of this, look at games like, I always use Overwatch, because it's the game I know so well, is if you use someone like Roadhog or Tracer's Pistol is just raycast, but if you want to use something like Roadhog, who fires like a scrap gun full of tons of scrap metal, if you actually look at that, they're just really bad particles, like really, really bad, horrible, cheap particles, but that doesn't matter, because they fire a blob, and then the particles look like it's this scrap metal thing, but it's not. It's probably a sphere collider or something that's actually just a shaped ball. It's not really going to be collecting in collision with all those different parts. So the visuals don't have to look the same as the actual thing you're doing. Ask yourself what is actually needed mechanically, and then ask yourself how to visually get the impression of that from whatever effects you apply.
And continuing on that, if you're using a rigid body just on a bullet and you're checking every frame, and as Jason says, we use hit casting and all that. The other thing is a lot of people have walls, and then their walls are just a flat plane. And then it really is the problem. Because if you've got a character and they're nice and chunky, then yeah, you've got a more chance of hitting them. But if you're going through just a mesh collider against a wall, then you've got a really high chance of missing it.
And as for that question about long distance weapons, so there's actually libraries. I forgot the name of it, but there's at least 1 or 2 libraries on the asset store for long range ballistic calculations, where people have done stuff to calculate. Like, for example, there is a video series by World of Zero where he creates a weapon system that has raycast penetration. So the idea that you'd fire bullets with particular weights and velocities, and it'll tell you how far it's penetrated into the surface that it's hitting based on the level of mass of the object you're hitting. There's a ton of really cool stuff. So you can cheat that too, right? If you're dealing with a bullet where you want to have like sniper range fall off, again, are you really firing a bullet, or are you firing a parabola that has a certain speed and velocity? So why actually throw an object and hope it hits when you can just calculate the parabola that you want with the fall off range based on velocity by speed or whatever you want to do, and then, you know, start a timer or fire something, or just check if it calculates. Like, it doesn't have to be a physical bullet if what you're really saying is, does the parabola fall off match the, you know, wind plus whatever nonsense you're doing. It's just calculation. So figure out the calculation you need to do.
Physical bullet makes it a little bit easier, it seems, though. If we're dealing with the situation,
I would probably still use a rigid
running
body
in front or anything like that. Or I remember one of the things Kyle had built with his FPS was this whole weapon system where the bullets would like slow down as they went through different types of materials and fall off. You'd shoot through like a bunch of panes of glass until they eventually got stopped and stuff. Reduce the force. There are lots of fun things you do with it. But yeah, you definitely don't have to always fire off an object. This thing's fun. I don't know. I want to make a bullet game now. So it got me inspired.
Well, I would say this is a tangent, but it's one I think is valuable. Unless you're literally making a replica weapon simulator that tests the velocities of weapons, here's the unfortunate truth. You could put a ton of work into this hyper-realistic weapon system that gradiates with weather effects and has all of these different dampenings based on the clothes of the person, how they're holding the gun, all these really cool features. And one, most people won't notice. And two, if they do notice, they'll think it's a bug because it's not repeatable. Because it's small, their movement or their position or the weather will make them feel like they can't trust the gun they're shooting. And if anything, it'll be registered as a bug. So it may seem really cool to mimic reality as much as you can, but the truth of the matter is games are for fun, right? And the way people play games is mastery. And the way you get mastery is you understand a system well enough to reliably trust the results. And in most cases, smart super systems that interplay multiple things feel like to most players like an unreliable system. So unless you're literally aiming for these hyper-realistic, everybody knows that's the point of the game, you're actually just better off with raycasts and then let people's own skill and mouse precision make the game more fun. It's not about trying to mimic every possible real-world physical tangent of how something works.
And I've just started a VR FPS series with work on handling guns and playing with guns in VR. So
that's cool.
Start there.
Yeah, I was thinking of the all of the ones that I've seen that are advanced. They always just end up being tech demos anyway because they're not super fun. Like, it's not fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to like play with the settings and stuff. But yeah, for games, like Jason said, keeping it simple is almost always the better option. You're keeping it fun. So you say you're starting building a new one, Dave?
I've had a prototype in VR for handling stuff for a while that I've been using with companies for what's called XR training, where we build a system for somebody to train to use manufacturing or something like that, and we do it all in VR so they could lower the time they're actually on the shop floor and stuff. And I've been doing that for the last couple of years. But as I've been developing that, I've been building on the side of that a whole interaction system of manipulating hands, grabbing things, items working the way they should do, or the tweaks and game cheats that we do to make them seem like they're working the way they actually do in the real world. And of course, I'm a massive FPS fan. So I've got the turret shooter going at the moment, which is, again, I've had to deal with all that physics stuff in Unity with bullets going off at crazy things and space fighters coming in. And again, I've got a series going on that on the channel. But then I just started doing the FPS stuff, blowing up zombies' heads and stuff like that. But I don't teach Unity, so my channel is really, this is why I did that, and these are the design points that I look at that. If you want to learn how to do that stuff, go and speak to the Jasons.
We got lots of cool shit to show off, though. It's fun. Which I'm kind of excited to come up there and see it all again soon.
Yeah, as Jason and I were talking about before, like, yeah, we may work on the teaching architecture stuff, but oftentimes we're just sitting here being inspired by everyone else's cool work while we sit on the boring architecture side of things, because that's where we tend to live.
Yeah, I just get to sit back and watch what other people are making. Like, oh, that's awesome. I was talking to Jason about Thomas's stuff earlier. Like, I watched, I'm like, man, I wish I could just sit around, like, design games, like, be good at it. Dave is also, like, a really great game designer. I've seen him design all kinds of shit. And like, Dave, make it. Like, Dave, can you design a game? And he's like, no, here's 5. There's, like, a list of 5 30-page game designs I did last night, and they're all good. Like, there you go. So I'm always inspired by that stuff, man. Just watching your guys' stuff. And
the problem becomes having to find all that stuff, because you have an inspiration, you go downstairs, you write it down into your Google Docs, and the next thing you're looking at it, and you go back to your concept sheet because you're going to do a hackathon or somebody's asked you to do something, and you look at this huge list of games that you've done there, and you're like, oh, I've got to search through these to find out the one that I want. So remember to categorize them now into like shooters or platformers, and again, the other problem is there's so many games you can make, and you sit there, it's like when you go to a restaurant, oh, what do I want to do today? And you just sit there and build something crazy. Or do the next thing.
You need to just make a website where you just sell game designs. Game
designs available. I've sold a few. I've sold a few game designs because I was like, I'm never going to go around to building all of these. I might as well get some money for doing some of the stuff.
I just teach people how to make design docs like you do, because your stuff's really good on there. By the way, Andrew, I think a couple people wanted to see you hop in the pool, if you don't mind. Turn this into a good stream.
Not quite yet.
Get you a drink. You can climb up in there.
I gotta say, the way the sun's hitting it, it does look like eventually. I just want to sit in that little white spot there where it's nice and warm. Look quite nice.
It's going to be a great day for the pool in the afternoon. Right now, there's a very nice cool breeze. It's perfect outside, but probably too cold to get wet. But later, it will be very, very hot.
Oh yeah.
But the webcam will be off.
If you want to ruin the stream, I guess, fine.
But Andrew will be streaming on Twitch later in the hot tub, so there's a section now for it and everything.
Oh,
my new OnlyFans, GameDev in the hot tub.
Watching somebody get electrocuted.
You're just watching somebody's laptop die. Oh man. All right, yeah. Is this turning into a hot tub stream? Yes, yeah. I'll have to get Jeff in there. Oh man. All right. So you guys want to jump into some tips real quick? I know Jason had like a wall of them and not a whole lot of time, so I want to make sure that like we have a full hour of Jason's tip time ready to go. Are you guys ready for that?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
right.
Sounds good.
So jump into tips of the week with Jason.
I'm debating whether I should start with the philosophical sort of like tips for work or whether it's the practical like lines of code. I think I'll go with lines of code because this is one that is quite surprising. Oh, so let's start with this. I didn't realize this was a tip until I was on a call and people were like, oh, you can do that? So a lot of people still don't realize you can do arithmetic inside of literally any field in Unity. Any of those input boxes. If you're doing any numeric field. So for example, I do it all the time with ProGrids, where you want to set your grid size to 1 meter and you're like, oh, I actually want it to be, a quarter this size. Just divide it by 4, right? Like you can, any field where you're typing in a number, you can multiply and divide and subtract and all that. So it's much easier when you're trying to copy one item's position, paste it in somewhere, and then divide it by 2 or something, right? So you can use that for laying things out. Another one in the same vein is a lot of people don't realize that you can actually set the direct position of curves. So if you've got a curve you're drawing using the animated curve editor, I found out, I didn't realize people did this, they're like nudging the points, trying to get them to line up correctly at like the 1 or the 0 line. If you right click and edit, you can actually type in the number for the points along your curve. So if you're trying to literally replicate a curve exactly, just right click a point and set the exact size to it. One of them that was a tip, actually, I learned from Jeff, who you mentioned earlier, is I used to use sprites for all of my images on my UI, but it makes a lot more sense if you're putting an image, like literally it's designed to be an image. You can actually just put a raw image rather than an image as your type in your UI. And if you put a raw image, you can just drag the actual texture in directly and not have to wrap it in a sprite. It's better for performance. It's easier to work with. So if you've got anything on your UI that's meant to actually represent a photo, don't use image, use raw image. What else we got? So, again, another one I didn't know about. I noticed you did this in the course, Jason, was clear all PlayerPrefs. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know there was literally a menu option in Unity that lets you just clear the existing PlayerPrefs for your project. And that's really helpful because I used to literally have the registry editor open and I would delete it myself, and it was like, oh, cool, there's an actual button for that. It's much nicer.
I used to make a script for myself to do it.
I still have it. I still just on my editor's library that I chuck into every Unity project I do. There is a clear PlayerPrefs option. There's an editor one as well for clearing your editor prefs.
Yep. But yeah, just edit clear all PlayerPrefs. Apparently, it's an option I didn't know existed. So there we go.
It's relatively new. So
it is very new. Yeah.
What is this one? So some of these I just put bullet points, so I don't remember exactly what they're meant to represent. There was one for MathF ping pong. A lot of people don't know that exists as well. Is if you want something to ping pong back and forth nicely, you can use mathf.pingpong. There's a lot of other helper tools like that in Unity if you're just looking for some basic operations. In fact, you can even make your own map function by using 2 lerps, but that's a whole different thing. What else is there?
You want to briefly just tell everybody what the ping pong is for people who are just a little bit confused on or not sure what that might mean?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if you've got a value that you want to go back and forth between two values, you can ping pong it, and Unity have a mathf.pingpong function that you pass in a time value, and it will back and forth between those two values. So it's a very easy way to do something that's going, forward and back, or between two colors, or whatever other variant you want.
And just as you increment, the time value, it starts to reverse and then go back and then go back, and right. So you use this, and you use that to like link up to an object's position or some other variable, like your health bar type thing, right? Bouncing up and down, right? You want to ping pong it.
And there's other options too. You can obviously use a curve, or you can use sine waves, or whatever else you want. But just to know that there are options there that are built in is a useful tool.
I always forget about ping pong, so I'm glad you mentioned that. I always forget that thing exists in there.
Here's a tip so I don't do it this way, but I saw somebody else do it. I think it was GameDev Guide, and it was a good idea. So if you're using assembly definitions, it can be a pain in the ass to have to go in, and what I would do is make an assembly definition for each asset and then link up all the correct ones to each other, which is a lot of work. But if you want a really quick solution to avoid the build times costs you're getting from your assets, if your project has a lot of third-party assets, grab all of them, put them in one folder called third party, and just put one assembly definition called third party assets, link it once, and all of a sudden, every single third party asset won't rebuild when you rebuild your custom scripts. So it's not the way I would do it, but I can totally see why as a quick way to solve that problem. It gets rid of like 80% of the build cost for a very short amount of effort. So
yeah, it comes in really handy if you're coming into a big project too. Like if you're especially like joining an already existing big project and trying to speed it up, it's a good trick.
Here's another one I use a lot. So if you have a tool, so something I do a lot is UI animations, and I like to animate an object from one position to another. And what you often do is you copy the position values and paste it into a second vector and try to line them up and match them, which is a pain in the ass. So what I do instead is, people know about context menu. If you've got a function and you put a context menu over the top, you can right-click the script and then call a function. Well, there's a second one called context menu item, and it's a right-click option on a field, not on the script. And so what I do is I put a set position on the vectors that are meant to represent a position. So I'm animating from a start to end. I would put a set start and set end function on it, and then I can move physically in the UI, move an object to one position, right-click the script and go set start, move it to another position, right-click, set end, and it just assigns both positions, and I don't have to be copying and pasting values in. So if there's a script which is designed around animating between two positions, or you're going between two opacities or something, make a editor function that will lock a value to whatever it is now, and that'll give you the freedom to move it around and not have to keep copying and pasting stuff everywhere. I'm going to pause there because I can keep going, but I kind of want to give other people a chance to have something before I go down the next lot.
On that ping pong one, there's also mathf.Purlin noise that people miss out on a lot.
Purlin noise is great.
It's for randomization and getting smooth randomization and all the rest of it. That's great. I mean, people should just open up that mathf library and have a read of it before they get into Unity, because it's got loads of functions that I see people recreate again and again and again in their games because they just haven't looked into it, because they think mathf has just got your radians to degrees and a few other bits and pieces, but it's got a lot in there to jump in.
Oh, and just is one thing, if anyone from Unity ever sees this, add a map function to the mathf library, please. A straightforward map, just mapping a range of values to another range of values. How is it not there? There's so much use cases to map two positions to 0, 1, or map 0, 1 to 2. Just add a map function. I have to keep pasting in my same extension library every time because there's no map function.
It's a very good idea. You should definitely add that. Because I do the same thing. I just recreate the function every time. I'm like, oh, let's go make another map function.
Yeah.
I never remember to keep it in a file.
Yeah, there's another one that I created, and I've got it in my library all the time. I'm not seeing it on Unity, but it's having the ability to animate on something. If you want a character to be set in a frozen position or something like that, and you've got all the bones all the way down, you can scrub through to that point on the animation. I have to create a function every time, an editor function that basically copies all of the transforms all the way down, and then you can paste it all the way down because I just want that character in that static position because I'm testing them grabbing something or something like that. But it's very quick in Unity to create that editor because you're just using your library check, your name and hierarchy check, and just pumping that stuff back on. But it'd be so nice to do that, just a recursive copy paste in Unity.
Another one that I think pretty much everyone here probably uses is the classic setting the alpha on a color. That's so annoying. There's no nice way to just say, I want this color, but 50% of it. And it's like, no, you have to go and make a brand new color, copy the RGB, and change the alpha. So a common extension method is just with alpha, pass the color with an alpha value, type in a new alpha value, works like a charm.
Yeah, I usually make a .with extension method where I can pass in the RG or RGB or A and just pass in any one of them as a parameter to do that, because it's super annoying, especially when I'm doing a lot of colors. I find it rare that I end up doing a lot of color code anymore. Usually I end up just fading alphas and stuff, and then most of the color stuff is done in the inspector by the designers. I had two things I wanted to, 2 tips real quick. I guess the first one was on just passing in delegates to methods, because I realized we had our call earlier this morning and kind of came up that it was a new thing for quite a few people where you can just pass in an action, essentially pass in a delegate or an action as a parameter to a method, and then you can save that off and then call it whenever you want. So one of the ways that I like to use this often is as a callback. So I want something to happen, and then when that thing is finished, call this method to let me know to clean up and wrap up whatever it is or deal with the result. It's kind of like an alternative to using events when you just want to have one thing call it back, and it's going to happen once especially. So if you've never used that before, I would just take a little bit of time, look into passing in a delegate or just an action as a parameter into a method and see kind of what that's like, and try it out a little bit, experiment with it. I might just do a video on how to use that in a couple real world scenarios sometime soon too. But I think that's an important thing for people to know exists.
Creating a generic message box is always the one that comes up, where you pass in an action for OK and cancel and things like that. And then
classic modal,
yeah, exactly. Classic modal message box.
Actually, one thing, just because it's come up a second time, someone said I'm making a band called Purlin Noise. So actually, I think Purlin Noise is probably something worth stopping on, because I don't think we explained what it is or why it's valuable. And I think it's one of those things that's secretly really, really powerful that a lot of people don't realize why. So to kind of explain the basics, if I asked you to pick 10 random numbers and you were to graph those numbers together, they would be spiky, right? They'd be all sorts of all over the place, no relationship between one to the other. And the problem is, true random kind of sucks. Like if you randomly build a maze, it won't be a maze. It'll be this horrible mesh of walls that has no sensibility to it, to what it's doing. And if you want a classic example of a Purlin random distribution, whenever you see those really cool terrains that sort of bounce and sort of wave and get bigger and smaller, the reason they do that is because things are random, but they're random relative to each other. So the way Purlin noise works is you actually create a bunch of random points the same way you would normally. If I said, pick 1,000 random points, and then you draw a line through all the points. And now you sample that line. So if you sample multiple points on the line, you're getting random values, but the random values will go up and down from the last value. So it's really cool because you naturally get shapes and things which gradiate up and down to different things. So it's like random, but random in a way that's consistent. And so you get much smoother values and much cooler. If you're doing anything that's generative or dynamic, there's also two-dimensional Purlin noise, which is how you get an X and Y position, and then you can move through a virtual environment by passing different values to it. But in short, if you're doing anything that's a generative thing and it's meant to be sort of organic and cool, true random is just going to give you spikes and stuff all over the place. Purlin noise will give you smooth and interesting values. So just in general, for example, Minecraft uses Purlin noise as one of the many functions for generating the terrain, right? So all of the terrain has these blocks of like slices of wedges of different ores and things. Those different terrain chunks are Purlin, so that you're not getting like one block of gold over here and one block of thing over there. Like they're little chunks that are kind of relative to each other in these kind of terrain heights. So yeah, I recommend looking into Purlin noise. There we go. That's what I'm getting at. There's other noise functions too. Purlin is just the one that quite frankly people do.
Yeah, it's the one that seems to come up most of the time. I think Jason's popped off for a second. So what's the next tip?
Oh, yeah, I'll dig up the sheet here. So I want to talk about a few philosophical ones that are a little bit like not raw tips. This one is one that I honestly think is one of the most valuable ones, but it's kind of hard to explain, which is I think most programmers get some sort of paralysis around naming. So we've all done this. We're doing really productive work. We're typing away. We're doing great. And then we hit something and go, what's this called? Is it a holder, an item holder, a thing item holder, an inventory item? And all of a sudden, all your productivity just goes down the drain as you sit there and you muse over, what does this do? Now, here's a little secret. The reason you can't tell what it's doing is because you don't know yet. It's not done, so it doesn't have a job, so you don't know what it's called. And what you can do is you can sit there and try to answer a hypothetical question, or what I do is I call it the stupidest name I can come up with. I call it Thing Doer or Stuff Maker Happener or some ridiculous name. And it sounds silly, but by doing that, I've taken it out of my brain. I have named it something, so that concept of choosing a name is gone. I can now continue working. My productivity keeps going. And then after like an hour or two of working, I'm like, oh, this is the thing that provides values to here. Value provider, done. Like the name comes to you once you've actually solved the problem. If you try to solve the name before the code is finished writing, you have a hard time. So it's a small tip, but honestly, like next time you find yourself freezing and trying to name something, pick a stupid name it that, and keep going. And I guarantee that's one of the more valuable tips I'll give you.
Yeah, I started putting the comment in sometimes first. If I start getting stuck on the name of the actual thing, I'll write the comment. What am I doing with this function? To then write that comment all the way out, clear that train of thought, and then write the name of the thing itself. But as you say, yeah, a lot of times just put something in there, and then because I still do it every now and again. I'll sit there, hands over keyboard, or you start typing the function name. You're like, well, hang on, this is getting, and then you think about it. You're like, no, maybe that's two functions. Maybe I need to cut that thing down a little bit. Maybe I need to work on this. But yeah, naming paralysis is a great tip.
I've gotten better at not being afraid to change the names of classes as needed as well.
Yeah.
And on that point, in Visual Studio, you can right-click on something and press rename, and it will go and find all the points that grab from that and rename them all over your code. Sometimes that can be a little bit dangerous because you're naming everything across the board, but it makes it lazy. It was a lot harder back in the day when you rename something and then you have to go and find out where you've broken everything that links to that particular thing. But yeah, it's so easy to rename things now in Visual Studio, and you shouldn't be scared of it.
Oh, and that's speaking of that, it's another one that comes to mind, is if you've got a list of things that you're creating like add, or create or something, and you want to rename the variable name or something beside it, a lot of people don't realize you can hold the Alt key and drag over the editor, and it will create multiple cursors in line. So you can actually multi-edit things. So it's hard to explain until I haven't got stuff set up. But if you hold Alt and drag your cursor over a selection, it'll type on every one of those lines at the same time. And there's plenty of opportunities where that's really helpful for like mass editing a bunch of stuff. Like if you made a mistake and there's tons of like dots and brackets that are in the wrong place, you can just drag over all the brackets and press delete once or something like that. So. Nope.
I think Jason's going to show you how he does it.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to turn my mic on first. I was just going to pull it up here. Yeah, you're talking about just holding Alt and drag, and you get
multiple cursors. Yeah, so you can type in multiple things. So if you're trying to fill in multiple lines, this is a really handy way. I often use it where you do an auto replace and you mess it up. You like forget a dot or forget a bracket, and you can just go in and go add all of it in one go. That one's pretty handy.
Yeah, done that before. Or just going in and adding like a bunch of braces at the end of stuff.
Next up on my list here is anchors to corners and corners to anchors. So if you do a lot of stuff with Unity UI, you'll get it. Now, anchoring can be a confusing topic, but it is really powerful. Like the idea being that you anchor things to the top corners of your screen, and then as the device scales, it'll scale relative to the corner it's pinned to. This is really good for corner pinned objects, health bars, and various different things. But sometimes you have a window, some sort of like screen or window. And if you pin to one corner and the window gets wider, your window arbitrarily gets longer, but not taller. And it can be a bit confusing and your UI can act a bit weird. What you can do is you can drag the little tiny arrows to the corners, and basically it'll start to scale in size from all corners. So it's usually a pain in the ass to do this manually. So you can actually find it in line somewhere. There's a script called anchors to corners or corners to anchors. And if you've got a shape that you want to scale uniformly wherever you put it, you can just call anchors to corners in that one location. So.
Yeah, that's a good script. I know Chris has used that a bunch of times and shared that with me.
Chris is the one who gave it to me, so yeah, that's where I got it.
Yeah, and that one, if we find the link, I have to drop it into the description below for people to grab. I have to get it from Chris, or just do a quick search for it. Or if anybody's got it in chat, just pop it in.
I guess another one is if you're using Writer. Is anybody using live templates? I assume you're using some, Jason.
I'm not.
So live templates are the autocomplete stuff you get when you type CTOR or PROP or FOR and it does the autocomplete. You can just write your own. And so I have an absolute ton of them that I use semi-regularly. So let me see if I can pull this up real quick. It might be easier to show you. Let's go with that real quick. Can you see my screen?
Almost. It looks solid white right now.
Oh no, okay. Maybe it's not showing.
Give it a second to pop up. Yeah, I use the built-in ones, but I never end up creating my own.
Oh, I use it all the time. Okay, so let me try something. Let me try something else actually, because I can do it through OBS. See if this works. What if I do that? Can you see my screen?
I can see your yes. There.
Yeah, you need to make it larger.
Yeah, I'll definitely need to make it. So let me just do it quick.
Yeah,
I'll make this bigger in a second. Let me just call this.
There you go.
Make a quick script, and I will resize it to show you. There we go. So let me just zoom in heavily here.
There we go.
So say I had this. I don't know why it's not. There we go. Stop being weird. Whatever. So say I wanted to have this class, and I wanted it to be a singleton. I could just do singleton instance. And it's just really handy to have sort of preset code like this. And if I had a bunch of some sort of properties, we'll get age, and what I often do is I'll wrap things in a region and I'll call it plumbing. And so I can select that section and I can go, that's a plumbing section, and it just instantly wraps the whole thing for me. Or if I've got some example field and I want it to be serialized, I can put it in a serialized field. Or sometimes I divide my sections as these are dependencies, and it'll give me a header for dependencies. Or these ones, I think I have other ones too. But so basically you can just make your own ones of these different shortcutted terms here. And so it's entirely up to you. Like if you want to have different, I'll give you an example here by showing you them. Where is the settings?
Yeah, you can show everybody how you actually create your own. So CTOR is like a common one that a lot of people probably know about. You type CTOR, hit tab, and it just creates a constructor.
So here's where the default ones are. So the if statement being one of them. We do if, it'll automatically autocomplete. Test is another one. I do a lot of testing stuff. So I have this one for should, and it'll automatically do a test fixture with the exact setup that I use. Or actually, let me just show you one last one, is I do this a lot. Here is an enumerator function which uses an animation curve to lerp a value over time. I use that often enough that it's just a really handy thing to have as a single shortcut. So just to show you how they actually work is you effectively go under live templates and then your language, C#, and then each one of these are the ones that already exist. So that's the one for get, that's the one for interface, and you can just add your own. So it's basically you just write the code here, give it a shortcut name, and then choose what it does. And if you're curious, like the conventions, just read the ones that are there. So what this will do, every time you put a $ syntax here, that's where the cursor will end up. So you can basically say, write this word, leave the cursor here, type in a variable, press tab, leave the cursor here, and it kind of shows you how to structure, like there's C2R, the one we talked about. It basically says whatever you type becomes the class name, and it leaves the cursor here. So I would say just in general, pick something that you write a lot and put it in here. And then if you do ones like these, so this one is a surrounded region. And so you've got here 3 options, generation or surround. If it's surround, whatever selection you've made, it will put that selection inside of whatever the section is. So like I said, if I
is that what that
$$
selection was?
Yeah, so that makes a plumbing section around what I'm doing. So it just makes it easier same with regions, right? You can actually do the same with, this is a default one, region, my region. And so it'll just automatically do the whole lot in one go. They're small things, but again, they all add up over time as like little advantages. That and just pressing Alt to go back and forth over your scripts is just super handy. So between those two alone, they tend to save a lot of time. Right.
Nice. On that navigation, by the way, one of the things I have set up on my mouse is forward and back buttons. That I just have them bound to forward and back, so I can click around, going back and forth through stuff when I'm navigating through my files. I think we're just about out of time with Andrew, so I just wanted to quickly say bye to Andrew. Let Andrew say goodbye to everybody, but I think he got too cold and just froze instead.
Am I not working?
You're sitting still. You look like a nice abstract painting right now. I can hear you.
Okay, well then my connection must be having issues, but yes, I gotta go back to the day job. So thanks everyone. I will see you on the next one.
See you
from the pool the next time, right?
Yeah, of course.
With a floaty.
All right. It's good stuff. Good having him here. How much longer do we have with you, Jason? I know you got to go pretty soon, right?
I'd say 15, 20 minutes-ish, I could say.
All right. Sounds good. Cool. I think did you have more tips that you wanted to jump into? I don't want to cut them off.
I do, but honestly, like, because we're doing this every week, I don't want to waste all the tips I have. So I'm going to save some for next.
Yeah, I had something that I had saved off and I'd wanted to talk about for a while, but I figured now might be just a good time to bring it up with you guys, especially with Dave here, because I'm sure he's dealt with this quite a bit, which was I've had questions quite a bit about programmers working with designers and deciding on who makes the actual game design decisions, right? And what do you do when you run into a conflict with the game designers where they really want some game design thing and you think that's a terrible idea, or you really want some game design thing and they're just not listening to your ideas at all? So you're suggesting things and they're not listening, or they're suggesting things and they're just terrible ideas. I mean, I'm sure we've all had to deal with it at some point in the past in both directions. I know I have. And I was just curious, what are your guys' thoughts on this? Like, what do you generally recommend? I've got my own that I'll share after, I guess.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, so I've run a few companies and I've had various levels of like groups and all the rest. So for myself, a lot of times when I look at the structure of how we're working with it, so let's take, for instance, Nice Touch Games was my first indie games company I created after leaving Sony way back in the 2000s. And I worked with a designer, and it was just me, a designer, and then we contracted artists to come in and work at the games that we were actually creating. They were basic mobile games, but I always had the way we ran it, because there was just two of us, and that's obviously a 50-50 decision. You can't basically go either which way. There wasn't a person to break that decision. What I would do is I would say if it was cast as a design decision, it would be him that got the final say. If it was cast as an engineering decision, it was me that got the final say. And I also done the business stuff. So if it was a business decision, I would have the final say on the business decision. So if we came to an impasse, and we didn't often come to an impasse, sometimes we would just sit and talk it out for ages and we'd realize the other point of view. And that's the main thing, listening to the person that's got that. But if we came to an impasse, the default would be, he's the designer, I'm the engineer. That's where we would break those things up if we just couldn't decide between the two of them. But a lot of times what I say to people is just sit there and listen. That person's obviously got that strong opinion or that thing there for a reason, and work it out. Sit there with them and work through the problem, work through what the design choices are and all the rest of it, scatter it out, think about what's going to be there and work out the decision from there, but then lay it down to that point. So even when I'm running a company or something like that, or going in and helping a company form a new idea or something, I'll hire designers to come in, and obviously I'm running the actual company, but if it's a design decision and they're the designers and they're sitting there saying this to me, then I'm going to go with what they say, even if I don't completely agree with it. And the reason being is, why hire somebody if you're not going to take their opinion into consideration, if you're not going to let them make those choices? So obviously there's experience, and you might have somebody on the team who's a lot less experienced than you. And I've designed a lot of things over the time, from towers that run a Lollapalooza and Super Bowl stuff and all the rest. But a lot of times it's still just, you've got that person there, utilize them, they've got that thing there. And if you're at an impasse, talk it all the way through. But then when it comes down to the point, if you're still at that impasse, the person whose job title it is should make that decision. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but that's how you move forwards. That's how you learn from your mistakes and iterate. If it's something, if it's a design decision, you're really not sure about how it's going to do, can you test that? Can you put that into a test box? Can you throw it out in front of 20, 30 people and see if it's actually going to play through nicely? So if you're really at that impasse, you can't make a decision, you really think it's a bad idea, test it, closed environment, pass it through. Maybe do part of it, do a quick turnaround, fail early, move on from that. Sometimes you might fail, but then go, actually, you know what? We learned this really great piece from that design that we can move forward with, we can pivot around that point. So that's where I come from it, as somebody who basically has a lot of designers working for him on a regular basis and is a designer himself. So
yeah, I'd say pretty much the same thing. The only difference is I learned that lesson the hard way as a contractor, because I used to be, I started probably the same path most people do, where you start with web design and work your way up through all of that. And so I used to deal with quote unquote clients all of the time that kind of like make your eye twitch, where people are like, can you make it flashing red and orange, and like shout at the people using it? Like, no, don't do that. And it took me a very long time. I yo-yoed back and forth between, I used to say, no, it would be a mark on my pride and quality of work if I did the horrible thing you asked me to do. And then I later grew up and went, no, you know what? The customer's always right, so I'll do what the customer wants. But then I grew up again and I went, they're doing this for a reason. The client has come to you because they want more sales, or they want people to enjoy it, or whatever. And I realized I'm being unfair to them if I do either of the other two. If I either shut them down, or I ignore what they're saying, or I do it blindly, even if I think it's stupid, I'm not giving them, one, the benefit of my experience, and two, I'm also just not helping them because of my own stubbornness or whatever. So what I realized is the goal is, if you get quote unquote stupid suggestions from people, the trick is to just go, well, why do they think that's the case? And if it's genuinely a bad decision, then what I usually do is I would say, look, from my experience, I recommend these things. I would find other sources that back me up and I would give it to them. If it's more of a creative decision, should we do A or should we do B? And there's not like a dedicated right answer. What I've found is, for my career at least, it's more valuable for me to not care about that decision. What I would say is my job is to empower people to do their jobs better. And so as a developer or / tool developer, I would say, you know what? Why don't we try both of our ideas if it's possible? Can I make you a tool which can do every variation of what we're talking about, and then you can play with it and pick one of them that works, and we can try it out? And so, similar to what you're saying about prototyping, my answer is, if I disagree with them, I will sneakily give them a tool that does what they want, but has sliders that moves it to what I want, and I would let them figure it out for themselves if I feel like I'm right. If I'm so certain of my ideas, they can try it their way, but have different options that move it closer to what I think is right. And if I'm right, they will play with it and it'll bear out, because they'll have decided naturally to move to my direction. If I'm wrong, they won't, and then lesson learned. Either way, I usually find there's no point having an argument over it. You can have a debate, of course, but like in general, my job is to make tools, and then creative people will create things with it. I tend not to care. My entire perspective is academic. I will learn correct color theory and how to apply things and all the logic. And if I see somebody doing something incorrect as per standard advice for how long should this animation be, or how should this curve look, I will give them the research and I will give an example of what I think it should be. But I'm not there to be creative. I'm there to, proofread it and then give them tools. And beyond that point, I'm more than happy to sit back and let creative people do creative stuff.
Nice. It's interesting. You guys are very similar. And I mean, I think I have pretty close advice on that as well. But before I give it, I wanted to make sure that everybody hit the thumbs up button and subscribed first, because if you haven't done that, then you probably don't want to hear the advice. So in general, I think that because tools background, we've had a lot of experience talking to designers. We've all got kind of similar advice. Like I know Dave did a lot of tool stuff. Jason did too. So like we've worked a lot directly with designers. I have in the past met programmers who don't really work well with designers though, who really struggle with it. I don't know if you guys have done this and run into this in the past with like programmers.
Well, I did early in my career.
Yeah, who hate all the designers, think all the designers are stupid, and that kind of thing, or designers who hate the programming team. I've run into both in the past, but in general, I find that like just having a good relationship with the designers and being able to understand what it is that they actually want usually alleviates most of these problems, because most of the time when I've seen people not like something that designers wanted to do, it's because either they didn't understand what the designer actually wanted to do because it wasn't communicated really well or wasn't received well, or the designer was designing into some stupid box that they thought that they were locked into, like some limits that the designer heard in a meeting and was under the impression that were those were their hard requirements and that they had to design around this box. And those are usually the two cases that there are big problems, where the programmers just don't want to build this thing because they think it's a stupid waste of time, and the designer's like, please, why aren't you doing this thing? Like, you made me design this in this stupid way and now it's not even getting built. So communicating generally tends to fix most of the problems, but in general, I agree with both of you that the design decisions should, most of the time, 95% of the time, lay on design. There are some cases where you have like the newer designers who are either newer to the project, the game, or just game design in general, where somebody who's just been there longer is going to outweigh them in their actual design skills. But in general, the designers, especially the lead designers, whoever's in charge of the design team, should be making those calls. And you wouldn't want them making your engineering decisions, right? to be the same. Just imagine a reverse scenario where they're like, yeah, well, we really decided that we need to use Unreal, so we're going to switch, right? The designer's like, yeah, we've decided that it's easier for us and we need to make the switch. We're going to switch it, or we're going to use this network stack because we heard it was good and we really like this network stack, or whatever. Like,
and that usually means they went to some meeting and some vendor talked their ear and convinced them to switch, and then you're going to have to pay the price of whatever decision someone convinced somebody else at a bar to get. I've been on that side of things where they come in and go, oh, you're completely changing all the work you're doing because this guy told us it's faster. It's like, do you not trust your entire team? No, Brendan, yeah, that's a horrible position to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with a programmer coming in doing that to the design team because he just played a new game that had a cool thing in it. So that has to be part of the game. Yeah. Oh. All right. Well, hopefully
clear communication. Clear communication is the key to all of that. And
yeah, I think talking a lot and talking outside of actual work stuff. I did a video recently about just the value of socializing with people that you work with outside of work a little bit, even just at lunchtime, like going out and hanging out and talking about the random stuff. It helps make all of those other communications a whole lot easier, at least in my experience. Like, I've had people that I didn't talk to at all at work, and then suddenly we're going out to lunch, and now we're like best friends at work, and we're way more productive and able to communicate and get things done a lot quicker, and I'm able to know what their problems are and solve them really easily. So
yeah, avoiding silos in big teams is a constant struggle for the producer and everything else. Making sure that the designers aren't just sitting on their own and that they know the engine limitations that they can work to, and the engine guys know what the designers are building. Because you see it even in the big AAAs. I've seen it where you walk in and the two teams haven't talked to each other and they're making different games.
Oh yeah,
and actually, I would say
where they were in separate buildings. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think this is one of those, like, if there's any like general working life advice more than anything, is I've worked across the board from big corporations to literally two of us in a small office somewhere to working for myself to hiring people, and the one thing that's a constant is usually if you're your own boss, you can usually be a little bit more blasé about it. But if you're working for somebody else, it's very, very easy to fall into the mindset of, screw this project. It's not my project. I'm going to clock in and clock out. I don't care. Or worse is you've got a team of people and whoever's giving you work or giving you requirements, they're the enemy because everything they give you is work. And so you see them as work providers and they're the bad people that you have to sort of fight with and push back at every instance. And just general life advice is, if you're looking at the other people you work with as literally combatants in what you're doing, you're like, don't do it for like moral or highfalutin reasons about being a good person. Do it for your own personal sanity. If you change your perspective and go, they're not enemies, we're all people aiming for the same goal, your life will be easier. Again, don't do it to be a nice person. Do it to be selfish, because your own life will be easier if you say, they're trying to do the same thing as me. How can I best achieve it? You'll enjoy your work more because your work will be helping achieve a goal. You'll feel like you're successful, and the people will like working with you more, which will mean they will be less abrasive, and then you'll have an easier time. So in general, whenever there's a conflict or an issue with somebody, or I don't like what they're doing, I will go and ask them, and I'll go, so why do you have that perspective, and can we figure this out? And it's not even to be a good person. It is to objectively make my life easier by going, are we on the same page here? And if we are, let's work towards the same goal, and then my life is a lot less stressful. So I really, because a lot of people see this as like hand wavy, nice guy advice. Everyone be, oh no, I mean practically, you'll start to feel sick. You'll have headaches. You'll get annoyed at work. Your life will be worse if you go into work with a mindset that you are there to fight the system and do as little work as you can. If you go in with the mindset of, can I do the best version of this stupid task that they gave me? If I can outperform everything they expect, then you will enjoy doing the best thing you can do. It suddenly makes your job a fun task that's being the best version of what you're doing. So I would just say, like, it's amazing how a mindset thing drastically changes your life experience, because I was exactly that guy. I used to look at every new requirement as a new marching order that I would have to fight. I would have to they didn't write it down correctly, so I'm going to write exactly what they said here and not the thing that I know they actually want, because otherwise it's more work, as opposed to calling them up and saying, if I do it this way, it won't work. What you actually probably mean is this. Oh, right, thank you. And then I do the right version, and then it works the first time, and I don't have the next 2 weeks of giving them the wrong version, having them be angry, me smugly saying it's the wrong version, me saying, well, you should have written it the right way, and then me doing the right version, and then who wins? I've doubled my work. I've made everyone annoyed. Everyone feels stressed. Like, you don't win playing these mind games. It makes your life harder. So, yeah, number one life tip, just relax. Just treat other people with the presumption they have the same general goals as you do.
Yeah. Don't assume motives, right? I think people do that a lot. They just assume that people have some other intent or motives behind what they're doing, and that their goal. I've known plenty of people who just thought that other people at work's goal was just to fuck with them. Like, obviously not. Like, the person didn't care about them at all, or whatever. Sometimes, but like, it's just like they get into this mindset of like everything is a challenge and a fight. So it's certainly worth getting out of, and it makes a huge difference. And not just like 2 times. I mean, it can take like 5-10 times longer to get things done like that. And one real quick tip related to that was that if you're working with people and you're not seeing them face to face, actually using the things that you're working on together. So if you're building game systems that they're implementing as a designer, or you're building tools that they're using as a developer or programmer, or whatever it is that the person's using, actually going there and watching them use the things and seeing what they're doing makes the way bigger difference than anything else. If you can't go there and you can just do it on like a Zoom call and screen share, it's close, probably get you 75% of the way there. But just going there and actually watching them use the things, using the tools to implement the design stuff into the game, huge difference. You'll see instantly all of the stupid things that you've left in there, or all of the dumb things that are in the workflow that they're fighting around, or the things that you fixed that they don't know are fixed. So they're still doing some shitty old workaround that you gave them like 2 years ago, and they don't know that you fixed that issue. So you'll see all of these things and start to see a lot of opportunity to improve the relationship with designers and make their life just easier.
I cannot express, there's no words to express how satisfying it is when you give someone a tool that they use to do their job that you made, and then they do this long-winded thing, and you just like sit there and go, why'd you do it that way? Oh, well, I need this to reference that, and have this ID and whatever, and you have to copy it here and whatever, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you give them another build, and you like meet them on a call, and you show it to them, and they're about to do it again. You're like, actually, if you press that button there, it's like, oh, that's awesome. It's like, yep. So you've just like, you get to feel like this badass who's just single-handedly saved minutes every single day of their life because you've just solved an exact problem they had. Like, you may not think it, but that is such a cool experience where you are actively like able to improve someone's life by just writing a very simple button that doesn't take you much effort at all, right?
And for the people out there that are building video games, this goes into building the game itself and showing the game to people that are using it. Go and watch people play your game. Go and see them again, playing it again and again and again and again. See how they're working with the systems you created for them. And don't tell them how to play it. Because another thing I see a lot of people do, and it's the same with tools and the same with other things. Somebody stands behind them and goes, "Oh yeah, no, you've got to press X there. No, you've got to do this there. You've got to do this there." Well, you're not going to be there for the thousands or millions of players that are playing your game, hopefully, because you're successful. You're not going to be there to stand over everybody's shoulder and tell them how to do that. So make everything clear. Put good tutorials in place, put good interactions in place, give them good context around what they're doing and all the rest of it. And it will just work much better for you. And you'll get that satisfaction of just standing there smug behind them, watching them do everything brilliantly.
Yeah, I like the idea of... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would say I like writing notes when they're playing and just not talking until they ask questions. Like wait until they're stuck and they ask questions and ask for help before saying anything, and just write notes and watch what they're doing, watch what they're saying, and watch all of the things that they're getting lost and confused on. Because
that is one of the hardest things to do. When you've made a piece of software that you're like, this is the easiest thing in the world to use. It's 3 clicks. How could they mess it up? And you're sitting there and you're watching someone go, oh, I can't find the button. And it's the big, and just like it takes everything in you to not just say press the big red button. If they can't see it, then like you failed, not them, right? Yeah. So it's like you have to sit back and really stop yourself from just like shouting the right answer at somebody when they're not doing it correctly.
I was talking to my brother-in-law about this exact thing yesterday. We went to Disney because my wife and brother-in-law are massively into Disney, and it drives me sad. It makes me sad. But anyway, we were standing in line. They've got a brand new reservation system, and they've changed all the booking system and everything else. So that when you buy a ticket, you're actually just buying a ticket. You haven't booked the actual slot you're going to be in. You see loads of people walking up to the line and going, well, I bought a ticket. They're like, no, you bought a ticket, but you didn't reserve a slot. And only people with reservations now can come into the park. And you see people doing it. And the conversation was, these people, they're holding up the line and stuff like that. And it's like, well, no, it's not them. It's the people that are going up to, but it's not the people that are going up. It's the company that's at fault. They've built a system that's not clear to the end user, to the lowest common denominator on how they're going to use their system. It's not a clear path all the way through. And they need to fix that, because you might sit there and go, well, my client's dumb. Why are they not doing it this way? Whether it be just the designer on your team, the programmer on your team, something else. But it's not. It's you that hasn't made it clear enough, or worked it through enough, or watched enough people playing it that that problem's there.
In fact, actually, here's a little bit of tough love for somebody in the comment section, because it's exactly what you're saying. So here's a comment I see all of the time, and it's funny because I read that in my own voice from years ago when I would have said exactly the same thing, which is, what if you join a project and it's a code smell, everything's messy and horrible, and my boss keeps telling me to make it fast, and like I'm trying to do it properly. Does he not realize that I'm trying to help him? I'm trying to make good code, and he just keeps telling me to work faster? Well, here's the unfortunate hot take. You're wrong, not them. And it's not the fact that you're conceptually right. Your code should be clean. It should be well written. But the fault isn't that they're trying to tell you to do bad code. They're not saying that. They're looking for value for them. So if you flip the script and look at it from their perspective, they're not asking something unreasonable. They've hired somebody to do a job, and you're giving them nothing for weeks on end because you're doing invisible magic that's telling them it's valuable, and they can't see it. So the problem isn't that they're asking you to rush or that they're asking for something unreasonable. It's that you haven't figured out a workflow for yourself that provides value to them and helps you build better code. So the trick is to learn to produce something that they can see and then scale it up in a way that solves problems. So I find the problem is a lot of people early in their career start by going super architecture. They start writing factories and systems and patterns, and then they go to their boss and they're going, oh, where's the product? Oh, it's not done yet. I'm working on it. It's like, well, what did they want to see? They want to see a button on the screen that when you click it, it makes a sound. Well, how about you start with the button, make some sound. It's a horrible button. It's just a big gray blob, but it works and it prints the word hello. It's like, oh, that's going to play a sound later. Then you go and add a sound to it later, and you can keep doing this incremental step. So from their perspective, you are constantly adding value. So if you flip the perspective of you trying to build this godly system that'll last forever and realize you're being paid to provide value to somebody, and you work from the perspective of provide value and then keep stacking it to make it more valuable, they will trust you when you go to them and say, it'll take a few days, I have to build a better thing here, because you've proven that you're actually giving them value. If you start from the perspective of saying, well, I have to work for 3 months because this code base is a mess and you're not going to let me do it, it's like, why would they trust your opinion on that? And the second thing is to kind of feed back to what we were saying before. If the code base is a mess, nobody sat down to write a mess. They tried to write good code and then things happened. And we've all been there. We've all written bad code. So the perspective of saying the people before me were idiots who wrote trash code, that's not going to get you anywhere. The way to look at it is, this may have been mismanaged with time, or people were in a hurry, or they didn't really realize it, or what realistically happened, they started with good intentions, deadlines got crushed, things changed, and bad things happen. That happens to everybody. So rather than like crapping on what's there, there's a great book, the Martin Fowler one. I'm not going to go reach it. I always reach for books. Basically, learn to refactor what's there and build a better system on top of it. So again, add value to the people that you're working for, and lean in with the assumption that everyone is predominantly good actors. They're not there to try to write annoying code and make your life harder. They're just writing code to get the job done. And if you can figure out how to get the job done and write code that works at the same time, that's where you can write good code and everyone's happy. So take a step back and see the perspective of the people asking you these questions. They're not asking you to write bad code. They're asking you to prove to them that you're actually doing value to your job. And if you actually think in that way, it's much easier to just put some stuff on a screen, show them something that makes them happy, and then gives you the time to continue adding stuff for yourself.
Yeah, I think of it a lot like, because I used to want to do that too, where I just want to rip out a project and start it from scratch. I'm like, this is garbage. I don't like it. Let's start it over from scratch. But now I almost analogize it to like a plumber. If I wanted them to come in and work on my house a bit, I hire them to come change it, fix the toilet and do something with the sink and maybe upgrade the shower or something. If they told me, hey, first I need to rip out all of your pipes for 3 months, and then in 3 months we'll start redoing them from scratch and it'll be better. There'll be fresh new pipes. They're going to be titanium pipes. So they're not going to go bad in 50 years. And then we'll be able to start putting things back in. You'll get your toilets back, in 4 months. And then in 5 months, you'll have a shower. It'll be a great shower. Oh, fuck you, So, and it's the same kind of situation with code. Like I see it all the time. Or I've been that guy, and you've been that guy. We all have, where we wanted to just start it from scratch. So kill it, destroy it, and make it from scratch. And there's value there. You gotta learn how to refactor and restructure things slowly over time while adding value.
I really like that plumber analogy. I'm going to use that in the future because I really like that one. Because I've often sat there and I've had the same question come from people, or somebody's turned up into a team I'm running and they're like, oh, so-and-so didn't do it right. And Jason's story's right. They didn't go out there to do that. They might be new. They might have been a young hire. They might have been just come into this thing and all the rest. But yeah, I love that plumber analogy. I'm going to use that in the future.
Yeah, because the problem is, right, the green field is always the best satisfying option for a programmer. If you have an option to raise everything to the ground and start with a nice clean slate, it's always going to feel good. But is it really helping the project? Or are you just being selfish and doing the thing that's better for you because it's nicer in a nice clean sandbox? It's not helpful in most cases. It's all about value,
Yeah, sometimes you sit there and they're like, I'm building this massive templating system that's going to do all this. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be generic. And you're like, it's one button over in that corner, doesn't appear anywhere else on this game that we're going to be working on for 5 years. How about we do just a simple one just for that one this time around? If we do more, I'll let you build your giant system that has this great template that does all the rest of it. But for that one button that we're only going to have in this 5-year project, let's just do the quick one. Not dirty, but just do the quick option that isn't completely generic.
You said that to me during our hackathon, Dave.
I've said that to plenty of people before.
I remember one hackathon where I spent the entire weekend on one button. I was like, oh, well, that was stupid.
Yeah, and hackathons are the best thing. Like if people haven't done hackathon, go and do them. Where to write dirty, quick, nasty code in an instant, because you can't write every factory, because by the time you've done that, the hackathon has finished. It's a great way of seeing, and that's a great way of showing time constraints, as Story was just saying. not everybody had that time constraint on that previous project where the code has now been lifted to move into your one. They had to get that game done. They had to get that fix done super, super quick because they were losing users. They were losing players. So they just got it done, and it was dirty, but it worked. But yeah, it's all fun in GameDev.
I think we're admittedly, part of this comes from experience because all three of us here have at some point not only been the programmer, but also been the person either hiring or working with people on the team. And so there is a huge difference in perspective when there's like a magical ticker pulling dollars out of your pocket every time somebody is sitting at a desk working on their magical system that doesn't solve the actual problem you asked them to solve. And it can be really exhausting where, like, I've hired people and I know how long it would take. It would take me 2 hours to do the thing that I've hired the person for. And I outline it clearly. I say what it needs to do. And I go away. And I come back and they're like, oh, well, I had to try this. I did a few things. And actually, I'm going to build this system. And it's all generic and all this kind of... It's like, does it do the thing? That, like, the one thing that would have taken us? No, I'm 8 hours in. I'll be done in a couple of days. I'm like, it's... Like, I'm not saying if you'd given me the thing first, you could have then spent the next 2 days doing all of the stuff you want. But just do the thing. Because, like, my whole day is... and especially because it's downstream. If you've got a giant team of people, there's, like, a conveyor belt of stuff. You put the button in, the next person gets to use the button, the next person gets to style the button, the next person... If you stop and go on your big rampage of writing a whole big system, you're, like, stopping so many people's jobs from happening because of some ego-driven nonsense. And it's so exhausting.
Man, I can picture. I've been that guy too, though. I think I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. But I've been in that case many times. It makes me always scared to hand stuff off if I don't know the person well enough and I don't know exactly what they're gonna do. But that's,
I stopped doing that a lot. Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable handing people work off if I don't know they have a good ethic towards getting it done. And again, value is the key word. If somebody understands that their job is to provide value, they are being paid to produce things that add value to somebody. And if you understand that chain and who it's for and what it's going to do, then they're just an infinitely better developer because they're not going to make decisions that benefit them. They're going to make decisions that benefit the project. And that subtle change of opinion is like night and day between the kind of people you work with. On that note, I'm like 10 minutes over, so I'm gonna have to go because this is like, it's a fun conversation. Like, obviously, you can tell I've really gotten into this one because this hits home, as you were saying. This is where there's like a lot of personal horror stories of learned lessons and being both sides of that. I've been the guy who's been an asshole to work with, and I've been the guy who's been frustrated at people I've had to work with. So this particular topic is a fun one.
Yeah, it's a big one for me too because I've been in those same spots. So. All right, I think actually it's probably a good time to just wrap things up anyway. So I guess we could call it a day today and just ask everybody to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and all that stuff. Go get Jason some coffee and check out the video I'm going to premiere later on today. Yeah, there it is. It's down on my... How do I point that way? I got to point. It's very weird.
Confusing, right? Yeah.
Down there. But yeah, I'm going to do a video that's coming out, a beginner video on how to make a simple game. It'd be pretty interesting though, and I've got the game linked up, but you can get on there and play it. So it's kind of like step by step. If you've ever wanted to show somebody new how to get into game development or teach them how to make a simple, fun little game, or you're just bored and want to go in and make something, check it out and just make sure you're subscribed and all that. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Don't forget to hit all the buttons, leave a comment. Thanks, Dave, for coming out, and I will see you very soon in person. Exciting stuff. Yeah.
And go check out the stuff I'm putting up if anybody wants to go and
let's
see
drop
that
a link for that.
Yeah, post a link for that.
Yeah, you want to drop a link in the chat, and I'm going to put it in the description down below.
I will.
Cool. And thanks again, everybody. And I'll hit the button, and we'll say goodbye, I guess.